impacts whatever you do. And here's a guy who, I grew up with a very normal life. His wasn't normal like mine, and he had choices to make. And in the end, he decided to make the correct choices. So I would like to introduce Jim Clardy. We haven't been called young for a while. He called you a young man, so.
Thanks, Scott. Good luck.
Everybody, you can hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me to come here. And I got to tell you, first of all, I am not a professional at this. Like Kevin said, I'm just a normal guy. I sell nuts and bolts for a living. Okay, real exciting, right? So I'm just a normal guy, and Mr. Serino, when he was talking to you, telling you, I'm one of you, I am indeed. When I was 12 years old, I moved to Newark, Ohio from Cleveland, and I went to Roosevelt. So I was a Bulldog. I know you're the Lions, right? Yeah. So I was a Bulldog. I know a lot of you, if Roosevelt was still around, you'd be going there as well. So it is. I am truly one of you. Thank you very much for having me. My whole point today, the whole thing I want to do is take you just on a little journey. And that journey is going to be my life story. And with that, I hope at the end of this, my prayer is that some of you will relate. That through the different trials and tribulations that I've gone through in my life, that some of you can say, you know what? I'm that person right now. And I hope that through that relate, you can understand where I've been, know that I've been where you've been, and therefore you can make decisions and understand some of the reflections that you see when you look in the mirror. So that's really what I'm talking about today is what do you see when you look in the mirror? Okay? I forgot my clicker. But before I get into that, I just wanted to show you a couple pictures of Mr. Stedman. when we were in high school, this is the first one I wanted to show you. That is Mr. Stedman. So those of you who know him know that that is not really how you think of him. But that's Kevin and I, excuse me, Mr. Stedman and I, on our last day as seniors in high school at Lincoln Valley. Here's another great one of him. And this picture this was the LCL championship, right? Okay, whatever. It would have been a better story if you would have said yes. But this is here, he won a championship in wrestling, and he actually, I think he broke his nose here. So you can see he's enjoying himself, putting a peace sign behind his competitor there. Here's another one from us and a picture from class officers. So those of you who have Mr. Stedman in class, hopefully you know that he's kind of a goofy guy. And if you didn't know that, I wanted to show you these pictures so you can understand Mr. Stedman is a lot of fun. But here's a picture of my family today. Obviously that's me and my oldest daughter, Megan. She is 14. She's now a freshman in high school at Medina High School. My middle daughter, Emma, she's 12. She's in 7th grade. My youngest daughter, Sarah, she is 10 and in 4th grade. And then my wife, Wendy, who is actually my high school sweetheart. We went to Lincoln Valley together. We started dating when we were both 16 years old. She is a teacher, an elementary school teacher in 1st grade in Medina City Schools. So I wanted to show you this picture, and then I really want to ask you a question. What do you see when you look at that picture? What kind of assumptions are you making in your head right now based upon looking at me, looking at this picture? And Kevin's right. Today, I'm very fortunate and very blessed with the family that I have. And I'm fortunate. But I want to take you down this journey of my life and talk to you a little bit about where I come from and let you know that this wasn't by accident. That me having a job, me being somewhat successful, I guess, in the eyes of the world, it didn't happen by accident. So, I'm going to take you down that journey. That's me when I was a little one. That's me in kindergarten. I was born in Cleveland. My sister and I, Shannon, who is my sister is sitting over there next to Mr. Stedman, we were born in Cleveland. My mom and dad, normal family. We had a house in the suburbs. My dad drove a big car. We had a boat. You know, we could go out on the lake on the weekends and have fun and go tubing and skiing. Everything seemed to be pretty normal. But it wasn't. It wasn't. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of screaming and yelling going on in our house. And by the time I was 5 years old, my parents were divorced. And this is a picture of my mom. I'm going to tell you too, when I go through this, I get a little emotional. So please forgive me right now. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm going to cry, all right? But this is a picture of my mom. This went ever graduation. And my sister and I moved in with my mom. Franny was her name. My mom was the life of the party. She was that person who was the social butterfly. She was a sales and catering manager at a hotel up in Cleveland. So she was the one who would book all the weddings and things like that. She'd work with them. And my mom struggled. Having two kids, being a single mom, she really struggled. And the way that manifested itself, her depression, her struggling, was she drank. And my mom drank quite a bit. As a result of that, she wasn't home very often. My sister and I would come home from school, we fed ourselves, we did our own laundry, we fought tremendously. We had some knockdown, drag-out fights that you would not believe. It wasn't easy. And that's because of my mom and the depression that she had and the struggles that she had and how she would deal with that by drinking. On top of that, after my mom was drinking and everything else, I can tell you that there were times that I was in school that I was very embarrassed. We were poor as well. We didn't have much money. One of the ways that I was very embarrassed is I'd go to gym class, just like this, and we went to a small Catholic elementary school. And I'd go there and we'd have to change our shoes because we had to wear dress shoes at school. And I'd put on my shoes, and when I take my good shoes off to put my tennis shoes on, I had holes in my socks. And that really embarrassed me. So on Sunday nights, before we had to go to school the next day, I would sit up and I would sew my socks because I didn't want to be embarrassed the next day to go to gym class. So I was that kid who didn't have much at all. My sister and I would sit there and we'd make, for dinner, we'd have loaves of bread and we'd make cinnamon toast for dinner. And we'd eat the whole loaf of bread. So, my mom struggled. But when I was 12 years old, my mom had a boyfriend. They were going to go camping down in Mohican. Has anybody ever been to Mohican camping? It's a great place to go. If you haven't been there, you need to go. So my mom and her boyfriend were going camping to Mohican, and somebody who was drunk came left of center. My mom and her boyfriend went off the road, and my mom got thrown out of the car, and she got killed. So my sister was 13, I'm 12, and my parents had been divorced since I was 5 years old. My mom was dead. She was 34 years old. For you guys right now, you're like, well, that's kind of old. I'm 40, I'll be 42 in April. I can't believe how fast the time goes. It's not old. 34 years old is very young. So, my sister and I, both sitting here 12, 13 years old, and what happens? My dad lived in Newark. My dad worked at Newark Air Force Base when it was Newark Air Force Base. Now it's Boeing, I think. So my dad had been remarried. He had a son. The son was 1 year old. And all of a sudden, my mom dies. My sister and I, who were 12 and 13, moved to Newark, Ohio. And let me tell you, that was not easy for me. Growing up in Cleveland, I went to a Catholic school. Moving from there is coming to Nurka High. Does anybody have the Nurka High t-shirt? Does anybody have that at home? I wanted to buy one and bring it and wear it. Because coming from Cleveland, going to Newark, big change. Coming from Cleveland, going from a Catholic school to a public school, big change. Going from a situation where all of my family, all of my friends lived on the west side of Cleveland, now I'm down here with nobody. Big change. So it was a big struggle for me. The kids all would make fun of me. I don't know if you can hear, people from Cleveland, we talk out of our nose. My sister's even worse. She says car. Go park your car in the yard. Don't you? You do. And it's, we talk through our nose. So I came down here, and the people at Roosevelt made fun of me because I talked funny. I was that kid I wore my socks high. That's what we did when we were in Cleveland. We pulled them up high. And everybody, when I came here, would squish their socks down low. And they made fun of me because I wore my socks high. So I was from Cleveland, could talk funny, I was different, and my mom had just died. And guess what? On top of that, my dad's an alcoholic as well. So it was a big struggle for me. In 9th grade, so that was in 7th grade when I moved. By the time I was in 9th grade, I started to get comfortable. I played football for Roosevelt. I started making some friends. Things started to flow a little bit for me. But that's when I started to make some bad choices too. I was a kid who would go home for lunch. And do you know what I would do when I'd go home for lunch? I would drink. My dad was a big drinker, and there was always booze in the house. I was going home for lunch in 9th grade and drinking, and going back to school drunk. In 9th grade. I was hanging out with a crowd that probably wasn't the best. The kid who was my next door neighbor, he and I one day had a crazy hair idea to go house to house and ask for money, saying that we were raising money for St. Francis de Sales. We weren't. It was going straight in our pocket. And guess what? Somebody, thankfully, called the police on us. So what happened? I spent 6 hours downtown at the police station getting a riot act from the policeman talking to me and this other kid about going out and lying and basically stealing money from people. I tried pot. I'm drinking. I'm stealing. I'm trying pot. I'm doing all sorts of things. Make a long story short, I got kicked off the football team for one day not showing up to practice because the night before we'd gone out drinking. And I got comfortable, I started making bad decisions. Well, to move the story along a little bit, my dad made a decision that we were going to move from Newark out to the Licking Valley, out to Hanover. And I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed because I finally had started making friends, finally started gaining some traction on where I was going, and now he's moving me out to Licking Valley. And trust me, coming from Cleveland to Newark was a big enough jump. I thought Licking Valley is where all the hillbillies live. And the football field, the practice field, was right next to the pig barn, if you guys didn't know that. So it was literally Cleveland to Newark, out to the sticks. Big change for me. So I go out to Licking Valley, and the whole situation with my dad really starts coming to a head. My dad struggled with alcohol, I don't know how many years. He was truly a full-blown alcoholic. And what I mean by that is, my dad could not function when he was drinking. I remember coming home and the desk where my dad put the bills and everything, it would be piled up with bills. My dad, at that point in time, owned a restaurant here in town, Pennsylvania Station. If any of you have ever heard of that, it's down on the square. It's the old Pennsylvania Railroad station just south of the square in town. And it was a very nice restaurant. He had bands coming and everything else, but the business was dying. And he was very depressed about that. So in addition to him always drinking, he had other influences really affecting his behavior. So we experienced a lot, my sister and I especially. My sister Shannon had it a lot worse. Her being a teenage girl, not having your mom around, fighting with your dad constantly, it was even more difficult for her than it was for me. So my dad would go through these times where he would be drinking, he wouldn't do anything, he'd lay on the couch for weeks, not getting up and doing anything. As a result of that, I was doing other things, trying to get engaged in my school and playing football as well. I was very fortunate. My junior year, I really became good friends with Mr. Stedman, and he helped me through that time. I'll get more into that later. One thing about my dad that I experienced that was very, very much a struggle was my dad always had to have a woman. Always had to have a woman on his arm. So what my sister and I experienced would be my dad would have a girlfriend, and then that girl would move in with us. And guess what? So would her kids. So I once sat down and tried to count it up. There was like 8 or 9 different women that my dad had a quote-unquote serious relationship. I think all but 3 of them he proposed to. And every one of them would wise up after a period of time that my dad being a drunk, it didn't make sense for them to be there anymore, and they'd get out. So my sister and I lived with this constant commotion of women coming in and out with their kids. And hey, all of a sudden we've got kind of like a stepbrother and stepsister living with us, and then 3 months later they're gone. It's not the most productive, it's not the best environment for a kid to grow up in. During that time, I was continuing to drink, I was continuing to party, I was continuing to make lots of bad decisions. Back, you guys are familiar with the 2-liter bottles of Coke, Pepsi, or whatever? Back then, they had 2-liter bottles of alcohol that you could buy. They were called wine coolers. And I'd buy 2 liters of the stuff and drink it. It's ridiculous. Now, being an adult now, it's looking back on what it is that I was doing. What I can tell you is during this whole period of time, I was angry. I was very angry. I was mad. I was mad that my mom died. I was mad that my parents got divorced. I was mad that my dad was a drunk. I was mad that I didn't have my friends and family like other people did that were close to me and around me. I was very mad that I didn't have a normal life. And that was a struggle for me. Going into my senior year at Licking Valley, my dad eventually lost the house because of that stack of bills sitting there on the desk. So the sheriff came and told us we had to get out. We moved. My sister was gone by then. We moved to Dresden, near Zanesville, if you guys know where that is. Here it is, I'm going into my senior year. I was voted captain of the football team. I was captain of the baseball team. And I'm moving 45 miles away. I had to drive, I had to pay money, first of all, to go to Licking Valley my senior year. And I had to drive 45 miles one way. And let me tell you, as a football player, going to practice from 3 o'clock to 5, there were some times during our newer Catholic week, we were there till 6 or 7, and I was driving home 45 miles after being dead tired. I remember waking up one time on Route 16 and had gone several miles and not knowing how I got there, because I fell asleep. It was hard. Because I moved so far away, trying to go my senior year, stay in Licking Valley, I had friends that I stayed with. I had the Gayschels that I stayed at their house all the time. I stayed at the Stedmans. I stayed at my girlfriend's house. I was sneaking around doing all sorts of stuff. So it was very hard my senior year. Got a couple more stories for you, then I'm going to get into my point. I finally went to college. Mr. Stedman and I were roommates in college for 3 years. We did go for 4 years. The reason we were roommates for 3 is because we had enough of each other. But I enjoyed those 3 years greatly. And the one story that I'll tell you about is, well, there's 2. First of all, when I was a football player at Licking Valley, Kevin and I both never left the field. Keep calling me Kevin, sorry, Mr. Stedman. We never left the field. And that's not because we were all that, the bag of chips, is just because we didn't have that many guys, and we were pretty good. But we go to college as freshmen, we didn't even dress for the games. It wasn't a great time, so it was a big struggle for us, being Mr. All-World out of Licking Valley and then going to college and we were nothing where we didn't even dress. That was very difficult mentally for me to deal with. When I was a sophomore, Kevin and I were in the room and we got a phone call late at night and it was somebody telling me my dad had been arrested. So I got up, drove down to Newark. My dad was in the sheriff's department over here on Main Street, and he had been arrested for carrying a concealed weapon in a bar. Does everybody know what that means? He brought a gun in a bar. So my dad, the guy who I finally started getting some normalcy in college, is now in jail. And let me tell you, if any of you have ever experienced talking to a parent over a phone through a piece of glass, that is not a good experience. It is extremely humbling, degrading, embarrassed for both me and my dad. So my dad went to what he went to college for a year and a half. He went to prison. He missed my junior year of football season. And that was the year that I had the great opportunity to win a bunch of awards. And I was an All-American and won all this different stuff. He missed it. My senior year, I had a lot of success too, so he was able to witness that. But that crushed me, that my dad was so, I don't even know what words to put on it. My dad was so, the drinking was so bad that he didn't even think, and he carried a gun into a bar and got arrested and went to prison. The last thing I'll tell you is, after I graduated from college, I had a situation once where my dad called me. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He calls me and he was drunk, and he sounded very suicidal. I drove 3 hours to his house, the whole time thinking, what am I going to see when I get to his house? And I fully expected for me to show up at his house and my dad would have blown his head off. I got there, he's in his kitchen, there's a gun on the table, and he's passed out on the floor. I was flabbergasted. I'm 23 years old, and here's my dad passed out. I have no idea where he is mentally, in his head. Why do I tell you all this? I want you to understand that those of you who are sitting here right now, and you've got struggles, and I know a lot of you have a lot of pain. Pain is being caused by your situation, by your family, by what's going on in life around you. But I want to ask you, what is it you see when you look in the mirror in the morning? What is it that goes through your head when you're looking at yourself in the morning? I want to do a little demonstration here. I brought a mirror in, and I want to show you what kind of things I would see when I was looking at myself growing up. I was seeing things like loser. I was seeing things like drunk. I was depressed. I didn't know, I was poor, and there's a lot of ways I thought I was ugly. There was all these things going through my mind growing up. So I'm asking you, what do you see when you're looking in the mirror every morning? There is an ending to the story, obviously. And how I got from all those situations that I was involved in to where I'm at today is really because there were different people in my life that were willing to engage in my life. They were willing to step in the gap, is the way that I like to say it. And I want to tell you about a few of those people. One of those people was my coach from Roosevelt. Bob Stevens was his name. We called him Bobby Bulldog. And Coach Stevens is the one who really taught me about pride. Not only having pride in myself, but having pride in my school, having pride in my country. He taught me that pride is an extremely important characteristic for you to have. Because if you don't have pride, you don't care. And when you don't care, you're going to have that loser's win that Mr. Serino talks about. There was Coach Riley. My football coach, Coach Riley, a math teacher from Licking Valley, is here today. And he was one of those guys who was willing to step in the gap for me. He was one who taught me, hey, dummy, hard work will pay off for you. Quit being lazy. He saw in me that, yeah, I didn't have it the easiest, but he saw that there was potential in me. And he wouldn't let me go by and just limp along and make excuses for everything that I couldn't do. So Coach Riley stepped in the gap for me. There was another one. Is Mrs. Cousins in here? Is she here?
She's upstairs.
She's upstairs. Mrs. Cousins is the sister of another person who stepped in my life. That was Jerry Hatcher. And Jerry Hatcher was our vice principal of Licking Valley. He's another one who pulled me aside one day and said, look, you're screwing up. I think it was my junior year, I missed like 20 days of school. And he pulled me into the office and said, this isn't going to work. You need to straighten up. And you know what? That's all it took for me. So he helped me, and he's helped me in different situations throughout school. He was willing to stand in the gap for me. There was Mrs. Stedman, who's here. The Stedmans for me. Mr. and Mrs. Stedman took me in. They were an example for me. Me having the life that I had, I didn't have a picture of what is family supposed to be like. They were the ones who showed me this is how we do it. And they didn't do it by talking to me. They just lived it. But they showed me this is what a family is supposed to look like. My sister's here. My sister Shannon. Oddly enough, those of you who fight with your brothers and sisters, and we did like crazy, my sister Shannon taught me a ton. She taught me, this is how you treat a woman. You open the door. You be respectful. You show love. You choose to love. And she was the one who taught me, this is how you do it. Even though my sister had all sorts of struggles in her life, she's the one, more than anybody, that set me up for success in my marriage. So my sister stood in the gap for me. And finally, there was my wife, Wendy. As I stated before, she was the one who I met in high school, and she was the one who taught me, hey, you don't have to go out and party to have fun. So she was the one who helped me along. We grew up together. We experienced challenges and trials and tribulations together. And all of these people were able to speak truth into my life and engage in my life. And they are the ones who really I have to thank today as to why it is that I'm here and have some sort of success. What I want to communicate to you now is that the reason that they did that is really only one reason. It's because they love me. And today, I want to challenge you, students. I want to challenge you to find that person in your life who will love you, who will speak truth into your life, who will call you on something when you're screwing up. That's a two-way street, and you've got to give people permission to speak truth into your life. And I'm telling you, that would be a great, great thing for you to do. By doing that, you will find purpose in your life. You'll have the opportunity to do different things. These people they can kick your butt, they can tell you all sorts of different things that straighten you out. But you have got to find that person in your life who can help you. The Mr. and Mrs. Stedmans of the world, the Coach Rileys of the world for me, the Coach Stevens, your brother or sister. Have that person that can speak truth to you. Build relationships. Be willing to step out and take the risk with those relationships. And let me tell you, if you think you can't find that person, then you need to be that person to somebody else. You find that person who's struggling, and you love them, and be that person of influence to them. Teachers, I have a message for you as well. I was always that person who was very coachable and loved to have relationships with my my teachers and my administrators and coaches. I just want to challenge you. If you are not that teacher today, to become that teacher. I'm sure that that's why you got into this in the first place. My best friend's a teacher, my wife's a teacher, a lot of my friends are teachers. Engage in their lives. It made the difference for me. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. So I want to encourage you to do that. So, with that, I just want to tell you, all this stuff, by you guys engaging in these relationships and moving beyond just the everyday stuff, this stuff will go away. And the only way to accomplish it all is through love. And I know that sounds cheesy to some of you, but I'm telling you, that's what it's all about. Build relationships with people, love on people, and you'll have the opportunity then to grow and do great things. Now, before I go, I've got a little prize for somebody, 2, 3, or 4 people, who would be willing to stand up and say, this is my favorite teacher and why. Yeah, you. Mr. Stepp is my favorite teacher because he can show you how much he can help you and other people. Thank you very much. There's a free burrito. Chipotle. Okay, dude. Oh yeah, now the hands come up, right? Okay, here, my microphone's right here. There you go.
My favorite teacher is Miss Douglas because she taught us so much and she's so helpful.
Awesome. Awesome. There you go. Okay. I like the hat. Here you go. Score is big time right.
My favorite teacher is Miss Brooklyn because she knows how to be a comedian.
Yeah. Humor is awesome, isn't it? There you go. Okay. All right, I'd like you up there at the top of the hat, too. You guys wear a hat, you're in a better spot. Oh, it's the Yankees. I've changed my mind. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. You don't need a mic? Do you need a mic? Okay, go ahead.
Our favorite teacher's Miss Grover. Is she in here? No, she's not. Our favorite Miss Grover. Awesome and nice.
Awesome is nice. Perfect. Here, pass this up to me, okay? I've got one more, and you're in. Here you go.
My favorite teacher.
You're good.
My favorite teacher is Mr. Cameron because he likes to do the show and writing.
Awesome. Good. Here you go. I hope that some of you can relate. And my prayer is that you'll go home tonight, and I'm going to challenge you guys to do this. Go home, write on your mirror. Write that word love on your mirror. I know it sounds corny, whatever. If you don't, I ask you, think about who it is that you can make an impact on. Who can make an impact on you, and who can you make an impact on as well. With that, I wanted to bring Mr. Serino up real quick. I met Mr. Serino here. I came down and went deer hunting at Mr. Stebbins' house, and then spent a couple hours with Mr. Serino just talking about what it is we were going to do here today. And I see in him that he's got the love and the passion and the desire for you guys all to be successful in life. I see it in the hallways with you guys just walking around with him and interacting with him. And you guys should be thankful that you have somebody in Mr. Serino that wants you to succeed and is willing to love you to do that. And I wanted to challenge you just to look out here and, hey, what do you think about these kids and these teachers?
The main thing about our school, whether you're a student or whether you're a teacher, when I look in that mirror, I know we care about each other. Bottom line, we care about each other, we appreciate each other, and we love each other. I love you guys. And now, with that being said, all right, I would like to let our guests know the reason we got hats on today was it's hat day. Okay? We usually don't wear hats. And students, the reason that some of your teachers aren't here is not because you know you took your quarterlies for the last 2 weeks. They're in their classrooms grading those quarterly tests. So that gave them a little break so they could grade the test so they could have a weekend. All right, so that's why they're not here, not because they don't care about the message. The thing that impressed me about when Jim came in and sat down with me, I said, what message are you going to bring to my kids? Because I'm very protective of you. You know that. And I'm just not going to bring anybody into school to teach, be the custodian, be a speaker. We have a filter system. And he says, Tom, if I leave them with these two things, they're going to have to make choices in life. They're old enough now to understand that. You are going to make choices in life. And he wanted to tell his story because it wasn't easy for him either. I don't know all your personal home lives. Okay? I don't know that. But if you related at all with him, that you understand he is a success today. He is a picture of what we would like to be as an American, a worker. He goes to work every day. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a good person with character. And yet you saw what he had to do. So he says, I want them to understand this, that they will have to make choices in their life. And the most important thing that I like, don't be a victim. So if you think, yeah, Mr. Serino, yeah, but you don't know what I got to go against, don't be a victim. Don't allow yourself to be a victim. When you have control of your life, you can make choices every day. That's why it's on the wall. You can come to school every day. You can be good. You can try hard. And then you have teachers that care about you, appreciate you, and love you. You can make it. No matter what your situation is, you can make it. One thing we learned, good choices, bad choices, your choices. Keep that in mind when we leave here today, and I'll dismiss you a little bit. But we want to bring back out because we want to make him part of our family, and we had a double X for him. And so one team on our PT, you are part of our family. Okay, now you know the routine now because we have about a couple minutes. We got to start dismissing it. You know how hard it is.